Hello, everybody. So, welcome to my ballot review. This is going to go as quickly or as not quickly as we want it to go. I planned to be on here for about an hour. So far, I haven't gotten too many specific follower questions, but I did tell you guys that this was going to start at 6. So I'm just going to hang on here for a couple minutes so that people who want to join can see that I'm live and that we're getting started and all that good stuff. So I'm going to pull up a couple of pieces of information that I found for you guys so that we can just get this going and give you guys some more helpful tips. I don't love my lighting where I'm at right now, but you know, this is a ballot, not a fashion shoot. We're going to be fine. So anyone who's just hopping on, how was your day? What are you doing? I myself was in a car for 5 hours. We came back from an awesome trip. Can't recommend it enough. You guys got to see some really cool stories from me at the ocean. So that was fun. And you got to see my nasty burn, which, it's healing. I'm fine. It just looks really awful on camera. So, let me pull up the ballot information that I have for you guys. I do want to quickly follow up on some stuff I've been reporting on as well for anybody who's hopping on right now, and just kind of, I think I'm going to look into the reports of the ballot boxes being set on fire. So far, nobody's votes have been so damaged that either they don't count or that they can't reach out to the voters whose ballots were damaged. This was in Oregon and Washington primarily, as we saw in the news today. And for any of my theater fans out there who kind of want to get involved in the activism side of being involved with theater and community, please check out Luis Miranda Jr., Lin-Manuel Miranda's father, talking about the absolutely disgusting things that one of the candidates said about Puerto Rico today. The things that he said were last night, and the interview with Luis Miranda Jr. was this evening on MSNBC. And check out his book, Relentless. I've only read snippets. I'm going to read the whole thing, but he's kind of an awesome guy. So that's my little beginning spiel as we get closer to 6 here. Please let me know if you have any questions before we get started. I'm kind of just hanging out. You guys are propped up on my phone and I'm on my laptop, so please let me know if the typing is too loud. But my laptop's pretty quiet. I kind of like it. And again, because this is no longer a subscriber-only event, I want to kind of emphasize that this is going to be available not only on my website, but on my YouTube. I also have a YouTube. I have so many things, you guys, and I'm so bad at telling y'all about them. I'm real sorry. But the advantage of YouTube is when I upload it, I can make chapters for you guys. So if there's a specific measure that you have questions about or a specific topic you have questions about, you can find that super easily. So that'll be fun. And that makes it easy. That just makes it easier for everyone. So I don't see anybody on yet, so I'm just talking to myself, but that's fine. Ask my roommate. I do that all the time anyway. Not new. Okay. So I have some I have some cool information on here. I really am just waiting until 6 so that people that kind of saw my story earlier can hop on. You know what though? I guess I will do one thing before we get started. So I do kind of want to explain something for you guys. I want to explain how bond measures are paid for, because a lot of what's on the ballot in California right now is bond measure. So bond measures do. So a general obligation bond is a bond that funds projects, basically. So it basically and the loan and a bond is a loan. I'm going to back up here. I'm way scattered. So voters have to approve bonds because a bond is basically, when it passes, it allows the government to borrow money for a specific thing. And the loan repayment, since a bond is a loan, it basically comes from a tax on, but basically taxes on all taxable property. However, what a lot of people should remember is that these bond measures come with really big numbers. And you're like, oh my God, I don't want to pay $10 million for XYZ. Like, I don't care what it is. That's so much money. California already has really high taxes, already has really high fees, already has this. And I get it. California is kind of unique in this way. And I have some thoughts on that overall. But I'll share some stuff in kind of in sympathy with that viewpoint. So basically, when I was researching a lot for my essentially senior big paper for my degree in political science and public relations, is I was researching Prop 47, which passed back in 2014. And I ended up looking at California's Freedom Index. And Californians fell pretty low, much lower than I thought we would fall on the freedom scale. Because while we have a lot of personal freedoms and civil rights and civil liberties supported in this state, we have limited economic freedom and are more regulated than other states. So I totally get, like, California is an expensive state. I'm with you all the way. But when you see these big numbers to support a bond, just remember that the bonds are sold and repaid oftentimes over a long-term obligation. Some websites compare them to home loans, but because California is so populated with taxpayers, I don't really enjoy that comparison, because it basically, the money is given and repaid for a very necessary, in my mind, very necessary project over time. And I guess, and I am going to do my utmost best to not really share with you too much about which ones I think are necessary and not necessary with this. When I explain the ballot to you tonight, you're not going to really hear how I voted and my opinions. If you want to talk about that with me, if I'm somebody whose opinions you really respect and remaining informed is not super your thing, or not something you're super able to do, or it's too stressful, A, I totally get it. B, I'm super flattered. C, you can message me at any time about what I think about these things, and I'll be as candid as I possibly can be. But I just wanted to go ahead and quickly explain what you're voting for when you vote for a bond measure. Because there's a lot of them, and a lot of what you vote for in a California state election is bond measures. That comes up a lot. So, it's almost 6. So anybody who's on right now, raise your hand if you want to get started. That was a really bad joke. So, okay. Yeah, I'm just waiting now that I've explained bond measures very badly. Anybody who's hopping on, tell me what you did today, what you're concerned about on the ballot, anything that you're wondering about, anything from the campaign events from the last couple days that's struck you as wrong, inappropriate, funny, disturbing, enjoyable, any adjectives really from the past couple days, because I can think of a couple. So, another note before we get started, I do want to go ahead and cite my sources here. So I am a huge fan when it comes to the state of California. We are very fortunate to have some pretty solid statewide reporting with Cal Matters. They're pretty good, and I'm usually pretty solid at looking at a ballot, looking at a list of propositions, and kind of knowing what's what. But when the wording of a proposition gets really funky, I go to Cal Matters because they always have a voter guide, and it's super solid. It's really solid. And they also do a lot of what I call educational reporting, where an entire article will just teach you something about a relevant issue or something in California. So that's my spiel, I think, on that. Okay. I'm just typing away here. Okay. Oh, another thing about Cal Matters. I keep getting distracted. If you are unclear on your position on something, there is something that they have on their website that I love. It's called the Prop Quiz. And the Prop Quiz will ask you questions about your ideologies, your beliefs, things that are important to you. And it will tell you what it sounds most like your position on X, Y, and Z bill would be and why. So, yeah, I think that's super handy. And actually, if you guys want, I will link that when I post this, just in case something that I say doesn't quite land with you or doesn't resonate in a way. I'm happy to help. And I don't need it to be all my own work. A lot of what public relations and communications professionals like myself do is actually just connect you with the right resources. So I'm just a relationship manager. Although not really, because as my cousin Kira so accurately pointed out, they make absolutely nothing. So, but that's the goal, is I bring you the right resources for you. So, we're 4 minutes to 6, and I'm running out of stuff to yap about. So I think we're going to get started. So, we've got on the ballot this year, we have Proposition 2, Proposition 3, Proposition 4, Proposition 5, Proposition 6, Prop 32, Prop 33, Prop 34, Prop 35, and Prop 36. So I'm going to start, we'll go in order. So Proposition 2 is a bond issue. This is why I was explaining this. And it would provide $8.5 billion to K through 12 schools and $1.5 billion to community colleges to renovate, fix, and construct different facilities for the campus. So the money would come from, it would be distributed through matching grants with the state paying a greater share of the cost for less affluent districts and those with higher numbers of English learning, with higher numbers of English learners and foster youth. So some of the money would be set aside for removing lead from water and creating transitional kindergarten classrooms and building career and technical education facilities. So basically, this is just upgrading to California public schools with a little bit more special attention paid to those that are catering to disadvantaged for whatever reason students. Maybe some of you don't know this. I think I'm more familiar with this because I'm from Northern California, slightly smaller town, but the facilities are for public schools in California, in these smaller areas where there isn't a lot of private schools, are super run down in a way that is really unhealthy for staff and students. So that is a little bit about why it's on the ballot. So voting, and again, I do also want to be clear. I will also tell you what for and against would be. So because of Prop 8, it was a little confusing. We can get some of that in California. So voting yes on Proposition 2 would support creating the bonds, borrowing the money to be able to update these schools. Voting against doesn't create the bond, and supporters say that the money is crucial for making basic safety improvements in schools, kind of what I was talking about, the health risks of some of the buildings that we have now, and the health stuff for students and teachers alike. Some of these buildings are just really run down, and a lot of schools are using portable buildings that are about 20 years past their expiration date. Opponents say that the state should include school repairs in its regular budget instead of turning to taxpayers to pay off a bond. And the claim here is that taxpayers are already overburdened. So kind of what I was talking about earlier about how, like, it's just too much money. It's so much. And again, not to convince you of anything, but I do feel it's important to remember that this amount of money is paid and then repaid over a long period of time. So it doesn't all come all at once. And I think that some of the wording that opposes bond measures like this in general, no matter what the bond measure is, I believe that it kind of leaves that out. So, but if spending is not your thing and you think that we have the budget and we should just redirect money, then it sounds like you're against it, and, respect. So I just want to make some stuff clear. So, but yes, that's what Prop 2 would do. Prop 2 is to create bonds so the government can borrow money to upgrade and update facilities at public schools, with more money going to K through 12 and some money, but significantly less money, going to community colleges. And the claim for it includes health risks of continuing to use these rundown buildings. Claims against include California's got the money and we don't need to borrow money, and it doesn't need to fall on the taxpayer to fix up a bunch of schools. So that's what we got for Prop 2. Proposition 3 is very straightforward. We don't need to spend a lot of time on this. Proposition 3 basically codifies into the California Constitution the ability for same-sex couples to marry. So it in practice, the measure would not change who can marry. It doesn't really change anything. It basically just makes it a part of the California Constitution. I am going to be honest here. I think that this is something that is necessary. I also think that some of the stuff on the California ballot and some of the stuff that I reviewed Newsom signing and vetoing in my blog pieces a couple weeks ago, I think it's a strong reaction from California to the Dobbs decision and what happened in 2016. And I'm not opposed to that. I think that it's great to keep California, the California that we have always been. But I will be honest with you when I feel like something is a response to an externality and not something that's happening within the state. So Proposition 3 just codifies into the California Constitution that same-sex couples can marry. It just makes it a more immovable fact. So Proposition 4 is it would authorize a $10 billion in debt to spend on environmental and climate projects, with the biggest chunk, $1.9 billion, for drinking water improvements. So this bond would actually prioritize lower income communities, according to Cal Matters, which I'm semi-using as a reference as we go through this. The thing that is interesting to me is that on the voter guide here, it doesn't say anything about fire prevention, which, I mean, I guess in California, climate impacts would be fire, so that makes sense. But in your ballot guide that you get, this thing, it does specifically say authorizes bonds for safe drinking water, wildfire prevention, and protecting communities and natural lands from climate risk. So one of the things that one of the things that I firmly believe is a injustice against the people that live in California is that people can no longer really insure their homes. Oh, Hilo's here. Hi, Hilo. It's good to see you. I'm going over the ballot. And a lot of fire, actually, I'm so glad Hilo's here as I'm talking about the bond measure that's related to fire, wildfire prevention and climate management in California. Undoubtedly more needs to be done because people can no longer insure their homes. And a lot of the indigenous people in California have some tried and true, very, very harm-reducing practices for managing and containing the possibility of wildfire. And I actually learned about a lot of that from Hilo's posts, so I'm really glad that he's on this live right now. And so point of fact, California really does need help in this area because insurance companies are fleeing the state just in droves, and there's so many people that just live in fear based on where they're living. Every time there's a dry season, and every time there's a stiff wind, and every time they see someone smoking a cigarette in their car, just anything in this state, it seems like, can cause a wildfire that can ruin a lot of lives. And point of fact, especially with the house prices and the rental market and everything in California, if you can't insure your home and it goes up, that is a financial crisis for a lot of people. So I guess I'm not doing super well in hiding that I support this. And I said I wasn't going to do that, but I'm really, really, really passionate because of where I'm from about wildfires and improving wildfire management in California. And I actually, unfortunately, don't know too much about the prevention techniques that they would use on the ballot. And that is one thing that would make me vote no, is if they were using methods that were more harmful long-term and not organic to the land, and not using those methods of prevention and management that we know exist from California's indigenous people. So we have those traditions and the records of those traditions available to us. So I'm curious to see if anybody knows more, but that's the overview. So it would raise 10 billion in debt is what it would do. Biggest chunk of that, 1.9 billion for drinking water improvements. I'm going back to the actual text of the ballot now instead of my little soapbox because it's important that we review this. Supporters argue that given the threat that the state faces from wildfires, water pollution, and extreme heat, the need for more spending on these issues is urgent. Opponents argue that bonds are the most expensive way for the government to pay for things and that some of the money could go toward unproven technologies. So kind of the things that I just covered here. They say that California should pay for such projects without taking on more debt. And before I say more, I should stop, but I think my face just said it all. So moving on to Proposition 5. This would make it easier for local governments to fund affordable housing and infrastructure projects. So California, according to Cal Matters, and I'm looking at the ballot right now, Cal Matters is claiming that California makes it difficult for local governments to borrow money. Not only do most city and county bonds require voter approval, they need the support of at least 2/3 of those voting to pass. So Proposition 5 would amend the California Constitution by lowering the required threshold to 55% for any borrowing to fund affordable housing construction, down pay assistance programs, and a host of public infrastructure projects. So basically, it's making it easier for local communities to solve their share and their burden that is caused by the homelessness crisis. We know that this is going on up and down California, but this would be a measure that would basically allow local communities to kind of ascribe their own method and their own community's traditions and the spirit of their own town to these infrastructure projects and building affordable housing, and how would it work for them, and asking for that money to make that happen just a little bit easier. So and a lot of the background information on it does kind of talk about how expensive California is, which we've already been over that. But all it does is it changes the rules in the California Constitution so that communities can basically have an easier time of solving this problem for themselves. So supporters argue that allowing just 1/3 of voters to overrule the wishes of 2/3 is undemocratic. So the 2/3 rule is what's being argued against there. Opponents argue that it's always easy to support taking on more debt if you aren't the one who has to pay it back. When a local government decides to borrow money, that tab almost always gets put on property owners who might make up a minority of voters through higher taxes. Again, bonds are long-term projects that are paid back over a long period of time, and they're paid back by everybody. So just want to keep in mind the information that I shared earlier about how bonds work. So, Sill's on. Hi, Sill. You're in Colorado, sweetie. You can absolutely keep watching, but I'm going over the California ballot right now, but you're a peach to support. So yeah, that's Prop 5. Moving on to Prop 6. We're going through this very quickly. I hope people have questions at the end, because otherwise I'm out of here in 20 minutes. Okay, so Proposition 6 would limit forced labor in state prisons. Proposition 6 would amend California Constitution to prohibit the state from punishing inmates with involuntary work assignments and from disciplining those who refuse to work. Instead, state prisons could set up a volunteer work assignment program to take time off sentences in the form of credits. It would let county or city ordinances set up a pay scale for inmates in local jails. And the ballot points out that while California wasn't a slave state in the traditional sense, it has a history of forced labor. I should also say that prisons and prison cost and prison labor and anything to do with the mass incarceration system has been a point of contention for California voters and California residents for a very long time. In fact, the proposition that I mentioned researching earlier for my degree, Proposition 47, was a response to longtime concerns regarding prison costs. And it was meant to cut down prison costs. So, this is not new. So supporters of this say that prisoners are often retaliated against for turning down assignments that can be dangerous or life-threatening. It's inhumane to have to work long hours on jobs that do not necessarily contribute to future skills for little pay. And a official argument against the measure has not been filed, but Republican legislators so far have largely voted against it. And it is it's sort of seen, and I get this, it's seen as a rejection of any type of reparation attempts. So because the mass incarceration in California has disproportionately affected Black residents, which I think is true of anywhere. And the reparations task force that was created from legislation that was authored by Shirley Weber before she was our Secretary of State when she was in the Assembly. And I worked on a research project about the task force that was created from that legislation with Dr. Mark Brown at Sac State. I don't know if he's on Instagram, but hi, Dr. B. So the task force actually recommended changing the state constitution for this. Basically saying that the inhumane work should stop, prisoners should volunteer to work, and credits and pay scale can be created. So that's what Proposition 6 does. It doesn't really limit, it doesn't look as though it limits a program that I'm pretty familiar with, thanks to my good friend Becca and her wonderful stepfather Ed, who runs, or used to train inmate firefighter crews. It doesn't look as though it would prohibit that, because I think, unless I'm grossly misunderstanding, a lot of those people volunteer for that. So, if I'm understanding properly. So, but yeah, all it would do is it would limit the forced labor in state prisons. Let's move on to Prop 32. We're going to be out of here so fast, you guys. Okay, Prop 32, raise state minimum wage to $18 an hour. So they want to raise the minimum wage again. Proposition 32 would raise the minimum wage to $17 an hour for the remainder of 2024, $18 an hour starting in January 2025, a bump from the current $16. Small businesses with 25 or fewer employees would be required to start paying at least $17 an hour next year and $18 an hour in 2026. If voters say yes, this is important, California will have the nation's highest state minimum wage. So people against, labor groups support the measure. Let's start with 4. Although they say it's not a high minimum wage hike as they'd like. It is estimated that it would give raises to 2 million workers statewide who haven't yet benefited from industry-specific raises or don't live in cities that require a higher wage. Supporters also argue that the money would help families afford basic needs, would be spent at local businesses, or help reduce low-income Californians' use of taxpayer-provided benefits. A UC Berkeley study has found that California's gradual increase to $15 an hour had no significant effect on job losses. Business groups oppose the measure. They argue that employers already face increased supply and labor costs from inflation, and that for some, businesses have not fully bounced back since the COVID pandemic. They point to the state government itself, which, facing a budget deficit, delayed a $25 healthcare worker minimum wage until this fall to see if it has the cash to cover it, and argue private employers should get the same benefit. They also point to surveys commissioned by the small city of West Hollywood, where 42% of businesses said they laid off staff or cut workers' hours in response to the city's $19.08 an hour minimum wage. So that's for or against. This is another one that I have opinions on, but I'm gonna keep it zip, but please contact me for more information if you want to get into how I feel about some of this stuff. And it looks like we are going to go to Prop 33. Yeah, this is going really fast. Someone hop on with a question, please. Otherwise, I'm just, I'm here. I love being here, but I would love to kind of engage with people on some of this stuff. If you guys don't come up with one, my dad will. And then you guys can watch me try to flounder through that. Because he has good questions. And I can't always answer them. So, maybe don't ask a question if you want to see that little shit show go down. So, lost my info here. Okay, Prop 33. Prop 33 would allow local governments to impose rent controls. Here's the thing about this one. Yeah. This one really needs to be talked about. I'm sorry, I'm pausing here, guys. Because I think... So, yeah. Okay. I'm gonna come out here with this. I'm firmly against Prop 33. I think so here's what it does, basically. This legislation was written by okay. So Prop 33 would repeal a state law known as the Costa-Hawkins Rental Housing Act that prevents local governments from controlling rent on single-family homes built after 1995, and when tenants move out. And this, okay. I'm trying to find the information on this because one of these propositions is written by a really, really skeezy person. And I want to make sure that I give you the right information. But essentially... Okay. Yes, so according to No on 33, granted, this is a person with an agenda, but No on 33, I want to make sure I have my information right. Prop 33 is authored by somebody who is basically a slumlord, which is a really, 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 strong term to use about someone. And I don't really feel comfortable doing the whole name calling thing, but it's really bad. So what it basically does is it makes it easier to block new housing, and it makes our housing crisis work. I'm not entirely familiar with property law, just the politics surrounding it. And I really, really, for the first time, I'm just going to straight up say, please don't vote for this. Because what you have to do, what you'll have to do is just read through so much legalese that I've tried to read through and make sense of. But I'm waffling right now because I'm really trying to find this information and give you the name of the guy who wrote it. But the guy who wrote it is a slumlord. And if I can't find it while I'm on here, I will do a follow-up story. But I want to find this for you guys. And I should have been more prepared. I had the tab up and then it went bye-bye. Okay. Who wrote it? Who wrote it? Yeah, I can't find who wrote it. Maybe that's by design. I'll do a follow-up story on this. I really will. But I really, really advise against this. This is going to make it harder for people. And it's going to create, the opportunity for essentially slumlords. So, and I will actually also link a video to a CalMatters, or I will link a CalMatters article fact-checking some of the claims about this. But yeah, this one's really scary. Yeah, this one's really scary. I don't really have anything to say about it except this is really scary. Yeah. Ugh. Okay, I need to do a follow-up on this, but yeah, it creates the opportunity for slumlords to come in, and the guy, I do know, I want to be as specific as I can, the guy who wrote it is already a slumlord, and his tenants have horrible things to say about him. Yes, okay, I have it here. Thank you, Ballot Guide. Proposition 33 was written and bankrolled by corporate CEO Michael Weinstein. Spelled like Harvey. Michael Weinstein of the AHF. The Los Angeles Times describes Weinstein as a slumlord with a long record of health and safety violations and unfair evictions. Here we go. State housing regulators cited his residence as living in squalid conditions, exposed to roach and bedbug infestations. So this guy wrote this legislation to try to get rent-controlled apartments that he would ostensibly run and take advantage of all throughout California. Knew I was going to find the scary information eventually. Thank you for hanging in there. I'm sorry, that was we got a little stammery and waffly while we were trying to find the info, but thank you for hanging in there. Super important to vote. And like I said, I'm really trying not to give my opinion, but like honestly, Prop 33, super scary. Rent control is not the answer for California, or at least not rent control in the way that this guy has designed it, because I just worry about the skeletons in the closet on that one. I really do. So, moving right along to happier times. Prop 34. It would require certain providers to use prescription drug revenue for patients. So, medical legalese speak here. This would require California providers, so healthcare providers, to spend at least 98% of the net drug sale revenue on direct patient care. So, low income and at-risk patients would get a discount on pharmaceuticals. They already do, actually. Since 1992, federal law has given healthcare providers that deal. Providers can make use of this program, and then they can turn around and sell those drugs at retail rates, which is a huge problem. The profits can then be used to expand their healthcare services to disadvantaged groups. Prop 34 would require some California providers to spend at least 98% of that net drug sale revenue on direct patient care. Providers that don't risk having their state license and tax-exempt status revoked and losing out on government contracts. So this basically incentivizes the providers that have a difference in what they pay for the drugs and what they sell the drugs at, to take some of that money and basically mandate by law that they take the money that they saved or that they made from those sales and put it directly towards caring for patients and providing patient care. And why is this on the ballot? I'm going to quote Cal Matters directly for you right now. The short answer is that a lot of politicians and housing interest groups really don't like Michael Weinstein. So Weinstein, the guy who wrote 33 and wants to basically become the slumlord of California, it seems like, he is the longtime president of the Los Angeles-based AIDS Healthcare Foundation. And under his leadership, the foundation has also become a major player in state and local housing politics. And they really, really want him to have to behave, is what's happening here. Between his AIDS Healthcare Foundation business and the housing stuff, they really, at making it illegal for healthcare providers to have a difference in what they pay and sell drugs for, including for conditions like AIDS and HIV. They want to make it illegal for those funds to be misused. So they really don't like him, and they want him to stop making all of that money from those drugs being sold for more than the providers paid for them. So they like him to take it in the teeth. And again, I'm trying not to insert too many of my own opinions, but I'm kind of with them on this. So moving right along, healthcare is a trend, you guys. No matter the motivation behind it, healthcare is a trend, because Prop 35 would make a permanent tax on managed healthcare insurance plans. So this basically, it would require the state to spend the money from a tax on healthcare plans on Medi-Cal, which is a public insurance program for low-income Californians and people with disabilities. It's basically California's answer to America, or certain political parties in America clamoring for universal healthcare. We kind of have it in California. And the revenue from those taxes would go to primary and specialty care, emergency services, family planning, basically anything you would go to a general practitioner or to the ER or Planned Parenthood for. So essentially with this tax on managed care plans, it basically secures permanent funding for Medi-Cal. So I mean, people rely on managed care organization tax, the MCO tax, for decades to offset the funds from Medi-Cal. Managed healthcare plans pay tax to get a dollar-for-dollar matching amount of money from the federal government. Healthcare providers who serve Medi-Cal patients argue that the tax revenue should be used for new investments in Medi-Cal rather than supporting the state's general fund. Newsom has indicated that he will oppose the measure. He argues that restricting how the tax revenue is spent it harms future legislators and the governor's abilities to balance the state budget. And it is opposed by League of Women Voters of California. It is supported by the California Medical Association. It's also supported by Planned Parenthood. But it is also, yeah, you can look at this. There's a list of opponents and supporters, but essentially it would just redirect a tax that's already there in order to continue and make permanent funding for Medi-Cal. So, I am, my only question that I would want answered before I commit to a vote on this, just if my expert opinion is being evaluated here, I would want to know if they imagine that which is more costly, the measure itself, or what would happen if permanent funding for Medi-Cal isn't secured and something happens and suddenly California is full of uninsured and underinsured people who desperately need care. From my critical analysis of the ballot, that is what I wonder. Which is more expensive? And I think, again, living in California, living in pricey California, you just have to decide for yourself which one you would rather spend the money on. And that's absolutely not a judgment on anyone, but I think that those are the two choices there of the costs. It's either, do you want to pay to secure, do you want the taxes that are already there to go towards balancing the state budget or to permanently fund Medi-Cal, or do you want to inevitably witness the crisis that would face the state if suddenly everybody that's on Medi-Cal then becomes or underinsured? Those are the choices that the ballot measure offers. Not that I'm offering. God, I'm not in charge of any of this. Can you imagine? We've come to my favorite and the last one on the ballot. Prop 36 increases penalties for theft and drug trafficking. Prop 36 would reclassify misdemeanors for thefts and drug crimes as felonies. The measure would also create a new category of crime, a treatment-mandated felony. People who don't contest the charges could complete drug treatment instead of going back to prison, but if they don't finish treatment, they still face up to 3 years in prison. The reason that this is on the ballot is my legislative bread and butter. So Proposition 47. Voters approved 10 years ago this year to reduce California's prison overcrowding by making some theft and drug-related crimes into misdemeanors. Ever since then, the homelessness crisis, the small businesses leaving California in record numbers crisis, the increased theft from big box stores has increased. All of these things have been ramped up because police cannot pursue for a misdemeanor, and they can only charge a misdemeanor if they catch the person in the act. So they have to actually catch people stealing a bunch of stuff from Target. They have to actually catch the person that breaks the window and steals all the bread from the small business bakery. Because that's what it did, is theft up to $950, so essentially $1,000, is a misdemeanor in California. So is drug possession. And just as a woman who's out in the world, I want everybody to know that yes, that does include the date rape drug. That also includes fentanyl. So not stealing, not doing drugs, have all become severely disincentivized because this also did away with 3 strikes. So while I don't think that it is necessarily to blame for the homelessness crisis, there's been a lot of causes and not a lot of solutions. It definitely doesn't help because street life, wherein you survive and subsist on, drug use and stealing and theft from both big box and small business, has all been disincentivized. And I'm not wanting to sit here and classify all people experiencing homelessness to you in that light, but because treatment was also disincentivized, I think the crisis has been made worse. And I really, again, I want to emphasize, I am not sitting here telling you that all people that are experiencing homelessness are drug addicts and thieves. But there is little incentive to seek treatment when you essentially cannot be charged for providing for yourself by breaking into a small business and stealing $900 worth of food. It's just the incentive to not live that way just is not there. And I fully understand that. And I'm not blaming the people who have been absolutely driven out of participating in the housing market by costs. The legislation and the voters that wanted to approve that and the people that framed that measure as something that was going to save money that could be given towards to schools and after school programs, the dominoes don't stop falling on this as to who created the situation that we're in now. But Proposition 36 gives power back to business owners. It gives power back to treatment facilities. It creates a demand for treatment facilities so the mental health care industry in this country can be funded and recognized and kind of have another boom, which is great because I know a lot of friends in healthcare and mental health care and social work. It would just... Prop 36 is fixing a mistake that was made out of haste. And I started this off by promising I was not going to give my opinions, but I did. Because this one I'm really passionate about. And I also do want to make it clear that when I say gives power back to the business owners, it's not just Best Buy and Target that are, those are my two favorite examples for some reason, that are affected by this. It's like I was mentioning the small bakeries. It's small businesses too. It's brick and mortar mom and pop stores whose entire fiscal quarter can be crippled by a loss of $950 worth of product or their window breaking. You know, these are numbers that seem small compared to the millions and billions we hear in bond measures, but these are numbers that can make or break a small business. And I really enjoy working with small businesses. I enjoy shopping with small businesses. I love it. And I think living in downtown of a small town where pretty much there's only small business has really, really instilled that in me. So, I'm looking forward to casting my vote to protect them and give them some cushion again. And if you have any questions about Prop 47, again, I wrote a whole paper on it. And Prop 36 was something I advocated for at the end of doing all of that research. So please let me know if you have any questions. But I will be putting this up on my YouTube, and I will be posting a story that has a link to this. Again, sorry I got a little distracted and stuttery on Prop 33. I really wanted you guys to have the name of that person that wrote this and the motivations behind that. I don't think I've seen such a blatantly brazen attempt from essentially a slumlord on the ballot before. That's kind of wild to me. So let me know what you guys are reading about it. If you have any questions, if you disagree, please let me know. And I will be talking with you guys later. Okay, have a good night. Oh gosh.